Hey everybody, this is David Stephen Patterson, the digital headhunter, and today I'm going to show all of you recruiters out there a better way to start moving from contingency to retainer. Before I do so though, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. This is DSP and I am the digital headhunter. Digital headhunters are the new breed of recruiter who don't belong in three-piece suits and prefer freedom and impact more than expensive business cards. We're the misfits who play chess in corporate America, and yes, HR is a four-letter word. We're here to wage guerrilla war against the big-name brands and win. So watch as I scale up my practice, and along the way, I share all my digital marketing strategies, real-life sales techniques, recruitment hacks, and big biller interviews. Welcome to the Digital Headhunter. All right, let's get into it. So, first off, before we get into the actual presentation, this was actually part of a much larger training that I currently have on my website. So if you go to thedigitalheadhunter.com and click on the button that says training, you'll be taken to a training page with a very long training video that shows you how to deploy a sales and marketing system in your firm in record time. However, this section was one that I cut out because of the length of the video. It ended up just being far too long. So that's why I've decided to do this video here to explain how you should be thinking about moving from contingency to retainer. Now, I will say this. For a lot of retained recruiters, when they give advice to recruiters who are not retained, you have to really take that with a grain of salt. And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes those recruiters who are working in a retained environment already, they're working with other clients or prospects that are already sold on the value of a retainer. So if they have a VP position open and they reach out to maybe 3 or 4 different retained firms and let them shoot it out, as it were, to see who actually wins the contract or gets the business, that's not really going to be actionable advice for a recruiter trying to move from contingency to retainer. The reason why is because the prospect already is sold on the value of a retainer. But the question is, how do you get a prospect that doesn't see the value in retained search work and is only used to working on contingency? How do you get them upgraded? And this is what we'll be talking about today. Also, when I talk about retainers, just to make sure I clarify, I'm not necessarily talking about fully retained work where so let's say you charge a third deposit up front and maybe another third at, say, 30 or 60 days, or maybe on the submission of a short list, and then the final third upon hiring the candidate. I'm not talking about that. We could talk about that, but all I'm going to talk about here is just higher level search, right? That means going from, say, maybe contingency to exclusive contingency, going from exclusive contingency to engage, where maybe they pay a deposit up front and the rest due upon hire, or even going from engaged to retained, right? I want you to start thinking about what you're offering, your offer, as just higher level, and how do you get somebody to upgrade to the next thing. That is how I want you to start thinking about moving from contingency to retainer. So let's dig in. So first off, I want to start this with a quote by one of the greatest salesmen of all time, arguably Dan Kennedy. And he said, "You can't be the lowest priced. If you can't be the lowest priced leader, there's no strategic advantage to being the second lowest priced leader." And that is very, very true. If you're selling on price, you're not going to be able to get somebody sold in a higher level offer, okay? Bottom line. So with that said, let's dig into the actual slide deck here and the training. So let's talk about forging your offer. So thing you have to think about in contingency is, are you selling a butt in a seat? Most recruiters do this. They sell a butt in a seat, right? They sell that butt in the seat as the end product. And that's all well and good because at the end of the day, when they hire that candidate, well, that candidate hopefully is going to be there for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, for a long period of time, and perform and hopefully exceed expectations. But here's the thing: if they need to get that butt in a seat, the manner in which they do so matters, right? It's not just about putting a couple of job postings out there and throwing this out to a couple of recruiters and seeing what happens to come in, especially in this market where employment is so tight, people cannot hire right now, right? It's a very, very candidate-centric market. You're not going to be able to get the right person just putting this out to a job board and a couple of contingency recruiters, bottom line. So the secret now to transitioning between or from lower level search to higher level search, right? And again, when I say higher level, I'm just talking about the next step up: contingency to exclusive contingency to engage, retain, and so on, right? It's not just about asking for upfront payment in order for you to take on the search. And what I mean by that is a lot of trainers, what they'll typically do is they'll say, well, make yourself scarce, right? Scarcity. So in order to engage my services, you need to pay this engagement fee up front. Otherwise, we won't take on the search, or it'll be of a less priority for us, right? If you want to prioritize your search, pay us up front. That can work. It definitely can work. But however, that has its limitations, right? It's not a very good way to sell it. What I'm going to talk about today is a better way to think about what you have to offer, and that's by decommoditizing your service. Because if you are asking for a retainer up front, but you're still pretty much selling the butt in the seat, it's at that point you need to think about decommoditizing your offer, right? And figuring out how to create an offer that's going to resonate with your market, or more specifically, how to solve the pains of your market. But it's very, very hard to do for recruiters because typically we think, well, how do we productize our offer? How do we do that? I go out there, I recruit, I talk to candidates, I screen them, I submit them in, and hopefully they'll hire the best one. And it's kind of the same thing that every other recruiter should do. So how do I make my offer different? That's what we'll talk about here, all right? So think about a head of lettuce, right? Back, 20 years ago, if you wanted to buy or to make a salad for your family, what would you do? You go out to the grocery store, you buy a head of lettuce for maybe 49 cents or 39 cents or whatever it was, right? And consider that a raw material. If I were to come to you 20 years ago and say, you know what, I've got a great idea. We're going to take that lettuce and we're going to chop it up. We're going to take the green leafy parts, we're going to wash them, dry them out, put them in a bag, seal it, and we're going to sell it in grocery stores for 8 to 10 times the price of a head of lettuce. You would have looked at me and said, David, you are crazy. No one's going to pay that much for lettuce when they can go get the head of lettuce for much, much cheaper. And wouldn't you know it, Fresh Express came out, right? And they charge maybe $3.99 or maybe now $4.99 with inflation for, in essence, you get maybe a third of the lettuce from a head of lettuce. Now, granted, it is pre-washed, or at least it should be. But now, when you go buy when you want to make salad for your family, what do? Most of us, we go out and buy the bag of lettuce. Why is that? Well, think about this, right? They took this raw product, in essence, right, that had no distinguishing character, nothing really distinguished one brand from another, right? We didn't look at brands when we bought a head of lettuce, right? They were all priced about the same. You just grab the one that looks freshest, and you throw that into your cart. Well, now you got different brands, and every brand, and people like different brands. Some people like Fresh Express or maybe some other brands out there. But what did they do? They created a product, and they created a solution that consumers didn't know they needed, right? So, a line I always like to refer back to is, and this is by Henry Ford. If I would have asked what my customers wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? But Henry Ford understood what his market needed, and he created the Model T car, right? So then he revolutionized the mode of transportation for the world. So here, think about the solution they're creating. So you have a busy mom or a busy dad. They pick up the kids from school. They come home. They're going crazy. All the stuff's going on. And who really wants to take out a head of lettuce, chop it up, wash it, dry it, and all that? Pick out the brown parts. And they can just take a bag of lettuce, open it up, put it in a bowl, right? So they're selling convenience. Right? It's a solution to a time problem. It's also a solution to a responsibility problem. And what I mean by that is, well, with a head of lettuce, what do? You wash it, right? And a bag of lettuce, what do? You don't wash it because it's pre-washed. Now, should you wash it? Yes, but you don't. Why? Because you're abdicating that responsibility. It's already pre-washed for me. I don't have to worry about it, right? So that's another solution they're selling. There's also brand consciousness, right? There's a bit of a when you are, say, middle class and you are shopping at, I don't know, but here we have Publix, which is the really nice grocery store here in Florida. Maybe Fry's if you're on the West Coast of the U.S. You go and buy lettuce, you're probably not going to buy a head of lettuce. Now, granted, the whole status issue, people don't typically think about it, but it is very, very true. People want the convenience. There's a bit of status associated with buying a bag of lettuce versus not, right? So anyway, as you can see here, this is a way to take a raw product to make it into a premium product. Same thing can be said for water. Back 40 years ago, water used to be free, or it still is free in the tap, but there was an old joke about Avion, back when Avion was coming out and was starting to become a thing. The joke was Avion is actually naive spelled backwards, because only naive people paid for water where they can get it free out of the tap, right? And now people buy bottled water for their dogs, right? Hardly anybody that I know actually drinks water out of the tap. Right? We buy bottled water. Why? Because they took a raw product and they made it into a premium product. And that is how I want you to be thinking about your own offer. Okay? So at the end of the day, the secret isn't just about asking for upfront payment. It's not about anything like that, because that is very hit and miss. Okay? So when it comes to it, most recruiters, they really do want to work at a higher level, but they don't know how to really codify an offer that justifies working at that higher level, right? And so what we're taught to do is basically sell our ability to go hustle out candidates as fast as possible, or which is a little bit better, we sell a what we call a proprietary process that is neither proprietary nor an actual process, or we rely on scarcity, as I mentioned before, which is again not a great way to sell. It's very hit and miss. So I'm a big fan of productizing your offer, and as you can see here in this graphic that I'm partially obscuring, is the core offer that we have within the Kinetic Group, right? So the search firm that I still run, and a lot of my clients have come out with offers based on the offer that we currently have, right? So when you create an offer, right, and you're looking at, let's say your recruitment process, most people have a very similar process, or at least they should, right? You do a discovery session, then you map out your market, and then you actually engage the search, right? You start reaching out to candidates, and then you find who the interested candidates are, and you develop a short list through screening these candidates, and you may have a short list of 5 or 6 candidates, and you submit them, and all the way down the line, right? So this is where recruiters typically kind of get screwed up, because that process, which is in essence the same for most major search firms out there, they have the same basic process, right? What you need to do is take each of these steps and try to work it in such a way where you're adding as much value as humanly possible in each and every step and tying it to a pain, okay? So So here's a good example. Let's take the interview process. When the candidates go in, and so you submit your short list, and let's say they do telephone interviews, and they decide, okay, we're going to bring these 2 top candidates in for face-to-face interviews, right? Or on-site interviews, etc. What value do you provide during that step, right? Because it's not really a step if, as I see on a lot of recruitment websites, right, they say step 6, step 7, you interview. That's not really a step because the recruiter isn't adding anything to the process. So if you look here under our bulletproof interview process, and it's going to be hard to read just looking at the screen here, and in my solution.ca we go into much more detail. But in essence, if I could break it down, is we know that one of the pains of our market, especially in IT, are going to be people who maybe pass the interviews, but they last maybe 6 months, but they don't have the technical skills that they said they did, right? They were very confident in the interview, they blew past everything, and they're ended up being a mishire. All right, that's a big one. So how do we solve for that? To make sure they're not a mishire, to make sure they have the right technical ability, to make sure they have the right cultural or to make sure they're a cultural fit, etc. So in our process, we have our bulletproof interview process, and in this sense, we are consulting with our end client to make sure that they have the right interview process in place, and also to make sure it's homogenized for all candidates, because you want all candidates to go through the same filter. So what we do is we help our clients develop a scorecarding system. We also help our clients design what we call DNA interviews, right? If you want a good description of what a DNA interview is, go read Jeff Hyman's book, Recruit Rockstars, fantastic book. But in essence, a DNA interview is a style of interview where you can help determine the cultural fit of a prospect, or a candidate rather. Okay, but we actually help them design these DNA interviews, and we pair that with a scorecarding interview, right? And we consult with our clients to make sure they're asking the right questions. Here's a big one: working interviews, especially for technical candidates, right? Let's say you have a FICO solution architect that you're interviewing, and you want to make sure that the person actually has real FICO configuration experience, right? Well, and for those of you who aren't in the SAP space, which is what I recruit in this, it's a technical term, right? So we advise our clients put them into a sandbox environment. They give them maybe a business problem that they have to try to solve within their SAP system. And again, sandbox is kind of closed off from the rest of the company, so they're not going to screw anything up. And see what they do to solve the problem, right? They spend 2 or 3 hours. Maybe there's a time limit. Does this candidate call the proper business personnel to start gathering requirements? How's their communication skill, right? Do they take the initiative to do that? And then once in the system, how do they solve the problem? What's their thinking look like? Do they know how to get around in the system? Maybe they don't get the answer right, but you're still assessing the problem-solving ability for this person as well as their technical skills. Most clients, most companies don't do anything like this. So we have a system that we can help design these working interviews, and we can help install this in our client's interview process. That's an area where we're adding a ton of value into the hiring process, even in a step where we're not technically actively involved, right? Because for most recruiters, what do they do in this step? They just schedule the interviews and maybe do a prep, and that's about it, right? So that's what I mean by taking the steps of a typical interview process, breaking them down, and in each and every single step asking yourself, how much value are we putting into this? How active are we in this? And does everything tie back to a pain? Because if you add a step or you add a feature, if it doesn't solve a pain, then get rid of it. It's not needed. Does it solve a real pain that your prospects tend to have? Okay? If you could do this, if you can productize your offer like this, tie each component to solving a pain that's caused by using lower level search, right? Contingency search, right? And it provides a benefit that lower level search doesn't provide. This is the foundation of what will become a very lethal sales process. Okay? So So keep this in mind. Very, 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 very important, right? It's not just about creating a process. It's productizing it. How much value can we put into it? And does that value actually provide a real benefit, or does it solve a real problem or a pain caused by your prospect? Really, really important here, right? And so I want you to start thinking about this. When you look at lower level search versus higher level search, right? And what I mean by that, again, is usually it's contingency to exclusive contingency to engaged to retain, right? And there's probably some intermediate steps in there. Depends on how you want to structure things out. The difference, in my opinion, between retain and contingency is becoming very, very blurred. Again, as I mentioned, retained isn't just necessarily a third in terms of the third deposit, a third fee due at a certain time period, and then the final third due upon hire, right? Is becoming blurred. And so I really do think that higher level search is becoming the new normal. When I started talking about this a few years ago, a lot of people really weren't doing this. Now, after working with over 350 firms, search firms on 6 continents, we're starting to see a lot of companies out there, a lot of recruiters selling using my method. Okay, so it does work. We got to realize that the retained model could be too consultative at times. I mean, it's very consultative, but again, to get somebody who is used to paying a contingency recruiter to go fully retained, that might be a bridge too far. Okay, now conversely, contingency, it's very specialized typically, right? For example, me, when I was working mainly contingency, I was doing SAP. That was my lane, that was my niche, very, very specialized. And contingency is specialized. We're typically pretty fast, and we're results based. You want to take a look at long search processes? Go take a look at Corn Ferry, Hydrogen Struggle, some of those retained searches that take forever, right? Because they're not incentivized to be quick and to be fast. With that said, contingency is a lot more transactional and results in a lot more mishires. Because again, the recruiter isn't really that involved in the actual process, especially the screening process, right? And to be honest, contingency recruiters are incentivized to do less screening, right? If you're one of 5 contingency recruiters, well, you're incentivized to get the candidate in as fast as possible. Even a C or a C level candidate, because what if they hire them and you didn't submit, or if somebody else submits it first, right? So it's basically a race. So I'm a big fan of the blended model, as I mentioned before, an engaged type of search where you combine the best of both worlds, right? Maybe there's a $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 deposit, depending upon the size of the estimated search fee, and the rest due upon hire. That's how I typically run most of my retained searches. I use it in a blended model. But this is how you produce a quantum leap in your production. Now, you can pour gasoline on your prospecting and sales system, and we design these systems for our clients, and that works beautifully. But at the end of the day, right, even if you don't do that, if you can move from contingency to some sort of shared risk or a blended model, you'll explode your billings. I mean, think about this. The national average for contingency, right, is typically anywhere between 10 to 20%. It kind of depends on how late the contingency recruiter gets into the game, right? If there's 2 or 3 recruiters already working on it, you come in late, you're probably down to a 5 or 10% fill rate, as opposed to maybe 20% if you're one of the first ones to start working the search, right? If you're working against a few other recruiters, plus you're working against HR, you're looking at more like 20%. That's not great, right? And to be honest, for your clients, it's not the best thing either, because at the end of the day, their KPI, if your quota is to fill one position one position a month, you don't care which one it is. You just got to fill that one. If you're working 10 different jobs, you fill one, hey, you're good to go. That's why many clients in contingency are really just viewed as KPIs, right? Now, if you look at exclusive contingency, let's say you're the only recruiter working on it, and you got HR. So it's you versus HR. You got about a 50% fill rate there. Versus a shared risk model, you have a 90% fill rate. And then a shared risk model where they're paying an engaged fee up front, and and you negotiate that all candidates that come through their own methods, let's say HR or job posting, whatever, will then be directed through you because, again, you want a homogenized screening system for all candidates, right? Otherwise, your client is comparing apples to oranges. In a shared risk model, you now have a 90+% fill rate. And if you take a look at your own billings and how many job orders you take on in a single year, imagine what that will do to your billings, right? Very, very important here. So the effect it has on our clients. Let's talk about this because this is also another reason why I'm a big fan of creating this sort of productized service out of this raw material, right? So think about this. So let's think about the effect that hires have on the leaders that we serve. All right. So our clients, when you think about it, they're playing Russian roulette with their careers, their financial well-being, and the welfare of their families. Because here's the thing to think about. Your prospects that you're talking to are humans, right? They're not KPIs, they're people. They've got fears, they've got wants, they've got desires, they've got insecurities. Sometimes, we always wonder, what does a VP or what does maybe a CEO, what does that CEO say at night to his or her spouse on a Sunday night? They can't sleep. They got to go into work on Monday and face the fire, and they're worried. What are they saying to their spouse? If you could be a fly on the wall, listen to that. That is great marketing material, okay? Unfortunately, we can't do that. But what we can do is use data to make the point that how they use a search firm is critical to their success as a leader and their company's success. So, there's a 3-year study by Leadership IQ of over 5,000 managers, 5,214 to be specific, over 312 organizations, hiring 20,000 employees. Okay, so this is a big, big study. They found that 46% of those people were mishires at the 18-month mark. Only 19% were considered successes in that same time period. All right. Now, these mishires have a huge effect on our prospects' careers. Think about it. What's your number one goal as a leader? Or number one mission, right? Is the success of maybe a department or a company, etc. And what determines that success? The people that you hire, right? It's not just about being a great leader. You need to be a great finder of talent and be able to retain that talent. When you have, in essence, a 50-50 shot at somebody being a mishire or not, that is not a recipe for success. Now think about this. 46% were mishires, 19% were considered successes. You know what that means? That means almost a full third were considered C players, right? They weren't going to be a success, but they weren't bad to be considered a mishire. Probably the kind of person where if they were asked to rehire them, they probably would think twice and say, maybe not. Let's go with somebody else, right? Again, these are real numbers. And there's lots of studies that back this up. But I love using this with my prospects all the time because at the end of the day, your prospects are in dire need of top performers. In dire need. Those top performers are rare and they're not readily available. Okay? And that is why you have to really get it through their heads that the real litmus test for any leader is their ability to field and retain a team of top performers. Bottom line, because as hard as these rock stars are to recruit, they're vital to your client's success, right? But the problem is in contingency, where we typically view our clients as a KPI, right? I got to fill 1 out of 10. Doesn't matter who it is, I just got to fill 1, right, to hit my quota. With that sort of mentality, okay, they're viewed as a KPI as opposed to actual clients. Remember, the average fill rate of contingency, 10 to 20%, okay? Do you think that those contingency recruiters are going to be able to stock those prospects' rosters with top performers or not? Probably not. And something I want you to be thinking about more and more as you try to start positioning yourself and positioning your offer. All right? So beyond just increasing your billings, let's talk about the benefits of a higher level offer. First off, you avoid the monkey see, monkey do scenario. So your job is to take your customer from their current state, right, where they're at right now, to some sort of desired future state. They don't care about what you have, right? Here's the thing that's a bit of a you got to wrap your brain around this, right? No one cares about your shiny stuff. Let's put it that way, right? No one cares about it at all, right? However, with that said, if you make a bold claim, in your sales and marketing that you can find these top performers and you provide evidence that you can do so, now they get interested in, okay, how do you do it, right? How do you actually, what's the process by which you bring people in? I'm a big fan of showing our prospects the process by which we make things happen because it gives evidence and it gives some credibility to what we're saying, okay? Very, very important. But unless you actually flesh out an offer, you've got no process to show them. Or if the process you have doesn't jive, or it sounds like everybody else's process, they're not going to buy into it. So it's very, very important in order to move away from what everybody else says, right, about how great they are, yada, yada, yada. If you want to make a bold claim and actually back it up, you need to be able to create an offer so you can actually back up that claim and crack open the offer and explain step by step as appropriate, okay? You also get your clients, or your prospects rather, to buy into your offer. You see, when your offer is a transformation versus just an improvement, that's what gives, again, credence to your claims and helps avoid the commoditization, of your service. So here's what I mean by that, right? I want to make a bold claim to my prospects that if they use our search, if they use our style of search, right, our offer, they are never going to want to hire any other way again. We're going to stock their team with top performers each and every single time, and we have a guarantee that makes sure that happens, okay? Now, that's a big, bold claim. That's transformational, right? That gets attention. So, it's not just about being able to find somebody faster or better, right? You want to think about completely transforming the process for your prospect. Third, it makes you a believer. See, most recruiters, they fail to sell higher level search because they don't believe in their offer. If they're selling a butt in a seat, it's hard to believe your offer when you're selling the same thing to somebody else, but now you're asking for money up front. It's great if you can get it, but it doesn't really make you a believer, right? I want to think about this. I want to think about if my client really needs a top performer, and I know in my heart of hearts and in my bones that my service can make it happen if only they'll pay the fee up front, right? Otherwise, they can't do it. They're not going to get what they want, and they're likely going to fail. If I really truly believe that because I've spent time working on my offer, I'm going to be much more effective in selling that, all right? And that's why it's important that it's not just about again creating this offer, but I want you to go out and talk to your ideal clients, talk to prospects, talk to leaders in your industry, and find out how they're underserved by poor quality search, right? And then I want you to think about crafting an offer using first principles thinking. And I actually will do a video on this later, but when you look at first principles thinking type of solving for problems, that means not using any preconceptions and going in with a blank slate and looking at each problem or pain and building a solution around that, how to solve that, okay? When you use that sort of thinking to solve each of these pains, and you do this and you create this offer, it creates this extra gear of motivation and passion around what you do, right? Most recruiters dread the sales process. If you really believe in what you have, you start loving the sales process because you can't wait to tell people about it because you're so excited, right? If you've been in the industry for any length of time, do you miss those days when you were excited about what you had to offer? All right, this is how you get that back. All right, it's that burning desire to share your gift that attracts clients to you like moths to a flame. All right, and last but certainly not least, you start recognizing that this whole thing is an equation. When you have your niche, right? Here are the prospects that I serve, and here's the result that I know that they need. Okay, it's just simply niche times offer equals result, right? Niche and the results are the constants. Your offer is the variable, right? This allows you to tune for feedback. This allows you to tune it until it resonates deep into your market bones, until it's extremely effective. And that means taking this offer out to market and trying to sell it, and maybe doing 20 or 30 sales calls, recording them, right? And then listening and analyzing, and then and taking those results, modifying it slightly, going back out again and sell it another 20 or 30 times, recording those calls, analyzing, going back to the drawing board, making some modifications, and going out again, and your offer gets better and better and better and better and better, right? If you recognize this as an equation and take the time to not only create the offer, listen to what your market wants, start creating your offer using first principles thinking, and then going out there and testing this thing over and over and over again, you will develop a lethal sales process that none of your competitors can ever touch, because they won't do the work that you're putting in, okay? So with that said, folks, that's all I have for today. I'm going to release a video here very, very soon with some more tactical ways you can go about getting retainers. But I think this is a very important lesson, though, for all of you, to at least to get the mindset of it and the basic theory. And then, of course, later on, we'll dive into some more tactical applications. And with that said, folks, I appreciate you listening. Make sure, again, you like and subscribe. And I'd like to hear comments down below. Let me know if this resonates with you, or if you have any questions, post them down below, and I'll make sure to answer them all myself. And with that said, everybody, thank you. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey, thank you for watching this video. You, my friend, are awesome. Now, show me how awesome you are. Do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment down below, because I'll be looking for you specifically to make a comment, and I may even reply to it. So, you never know.